What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Wednesday, May 12th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have a 6-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Trae Young from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Washington Wizards, who have the third worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Trae Young has averaged 43.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He scored 51, 49, and 38 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 35, and 26 minutes. He's projected at 43.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. And I think he can score you 50 fantasy points or more and crush value here tonight. He's $8,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $600 more on DraftKings. He scored 51, 50, and 71 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Wizards. Vegas thinks there's going to be 239 points scored in this game, so a super high scoring game, tons of fantasy points to go around. It's a fantastic matchup and a fast-paced game, so I like Trae Young here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, now I got a value play for you. I like Ish Smith from the Washington Wizards playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have a middle of the pack defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Ish Smith, he's averaged 18.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 20 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He scored 29, 20, and 9 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 23, 19, and 19 minutes. Now he's projected at 18.2 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.3 times value because he's $4,200 FanDuel salary, but he's $600 less on DraftKings. And I think he can score 20 fantasy points or more in this one, so that would be over 5 times value on DraftKings, well over 5 times value. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 239 points scored in this game, and he scored 29, 14, and 36 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Hawks. So I like Ish Smith, especially on DraftKings here versus the Atlanta Hawks. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Now guys, just as a quick note, we just released a free DFS contest on Draft Dashboard for MLB and NBA for DraftKings and FanDuel. There's over $500 available in the prize pool, and this is a totally free contest you can enter as a Draft Dashboard member. So make sure to click the link in the description of this video, give Draft Dashboard a try, and you can start playing in our free DFS contest and compete to win some money. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Kyrie Thomas from the Houston Rockets playing the LA Lakers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been middle of the pack defending opposing shooting guards. Kyrie Thomas, he's averaged 39.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 25% usage rate. He scored 29 and 57 fantasy points in his last 2 games, playing 29 and 33 minutes. Now, because he's really done well the past couple of games, there's not a lot of data to go on here. So he's projected at 35 fantasy points here tonight. I think that's a little bit too high. I'd put him at about 30 fantasy points here tonight, and that would be over 5 times value. He's $4,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,100 more on DraftKings. So I like that FanDuel price. So I like Kyrie Thomas here versus the LA Lakers. Okay, another shooting guard that I like is Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Marcus Smart has averaged 29.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 23, 24, and 21 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 32, 33, and 32 minutes. So he's been underperforming his season average the past 3 games. Let me check his 5-game history. He's been underperforming his season average the past 4 games. So that is something of concern, but it's a good matchup here. And he's projected at 29.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $5,800 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 more on DraftKings. And I like this pick because he scored 28, 42, and 25 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Cavaliers. So I like Marcus Smart here versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they've been middle of the pack defending opposing small forwards. Kevin Durant has averaged 47 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 32% usage rate. He scored 48, 64, and 39 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 40, and 35 minutes. He's projected at 50 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.7 times value because he's $10,700 FanDuel salary, but he's $900 less on DraftKings. So under $10K on DraftKings, 50 fantasy points would be over 5 times value. So Kevin Durant has scored 32 and 55 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Spurs, but he scored pretty much 50 fantasy points or more in 4 out of his last 5 games. So I like Kevin Durant here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, another small forward that I like is Najee Marshall from the New Orleans Pelicans playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing small forwards. But Najee Marshall, he scored 39 fantasy points last game, playing 30 minutes with a 20% usage rate. So I think he can score 25 fantasy points here or more and get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,000 FanDuel salary, and he's $200 less on DraftKings. So he only needs 24, 25 fantasy points to get you 5 times value. And we saw that he's got that 39, so close to 40 fantasy point upside. So I think it makes him a pretty good mid-range play. So I like Najee Marshall here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, who do we have at the power forward position? I like Blake Griffin from the Brooklyn Nets playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Blake Griffin has averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. But he scored 24, 33, and 28 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 24, 27, and 27 minutes. He's projected at 23.1 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 27 fantasy points or more to get you 5 times value or more. He's 5,300 FanDuel salary, and he's 600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. And he scored 17, 19, 35, and 45 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Spurs. So I like Blake Griffin here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, another power forward that I like is James Johnson from the New Orleans Pelicans playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing power forwards. James Johnson, he's averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 20 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. But take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 32, 34, and 21 fantasy points, playing 28, 30, and 26 minutes. So his minutes per game are way up, so is his production. So I think he can score 25 fantasy points or more here and get you 5 times value or more. He's 4,700 FanDuel salary, and he's 300 more on DraftKings. So I like James Johnson here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Clint Capella from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Clint Capella has averaged 40.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 49, 22, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 34, 30, and 23 minutes. He's projected at 40.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.4 times value. He's 7,600 FanDuel salary, and he's 1,000 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 239 points scored in this game, and Clint Capella has scored 49, 42, 45, and 41 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Wizards. So I think this is a great game to stack. So I like Clint Capella here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, another center that I like always seems to be underpriced. I like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the Portland Trailblazers, who have the 10th worst defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing centers. Rudy Gobert, he's averaged 40.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 28, 39, and 36 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 31, and 35 minutes. He's projected at 39.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's 7,600 FanDuel salary, and he's 800 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. I like this pick because Rudy Gobert has scored 48, 44, 36, 33, and 40 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Trailblazers. So I like Rudy Gobert here versus the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, and I just caught this play, but it is a back-to-back, so I'd be a little cautious. But Andre Drummond, he's in a fantastic matchup here versus the Houston Rockets. But now he did play 35 minutes last game, and he scored 47 fantasy points. So I'm just not sure how many minutes he's going to play with the back-to-back, but I think he could hit value here in 25 minutes or more, maybe even less. He's projected at 34.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 6.4 times value. He's 5,400 FanDuel salary, and he's 600 more on DraftKings. So we know Andre Drummond has monster upside. The only concern is the back-to-back and how many minutes he's going to play. But I think he makes an interesting center play on FanDuel where he's only 5,400. It's just a fantastic matchup. So I like Andre Drummond here versus the Houston Rockets. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.